Lebanon and Venezuela are currently among the fastest collapsing countries in the world, marked by severe economic crises that have led to significant declines in living standards, mass immigration, and social unrest. This video explores the multifaceted causes and consequences of their respective crises, providing a detailed analysis of their economic conditions, political landscapes, and societal impacts. So, here is the list of 10 fastest collapsing countries in the world right now. Before we start, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment your thought. Here we go! Number 1. Lebanon. The fastest declining economy. Lebanon's economy is projected to be the fastest declining in the world in 2024, with an average GDP growth rate of approximately minus 9.96% over recent years. The country has been engulfed in a profound economic crisis since 2019, characterized by hyperinflation, currency devaluation, and widespread poverty. The Lebanese pound has lost over 90% of its value against the US dollar, leading to skyrocketing prices for basic goods and services. Causes of the crisis. Political instability. Lebanon's political system is marred by sectarian divisions and corruption. The failure of political leaders to implement necessary reforms has exacerbated public discontent and hindered economic recovery. Banking sector collapse. The banking sector, once a pillar of the Lebanese economy, has effectively collapsed. Depositors have lost access to their savings due to bank restrictions on withdrawals, leading to public protests against financial institutions. Impact of COVID-19. The pandemic further strained Lebanon's already fragile economy by disrupting trade and tourism, which are vital for economic stability. Beirut port explosion. The catastrophic explosion at the Beirut port in August 2020 devastated infrastructure and deepened the economic crisis, leading to significant loss of life and property. Social consequences. The economic collapse has resulted in severe humanitarian crises. Poverty levels. Over 80% of the population now lives below the poverty line. Emigration. A significant number of Lebanese citizens are seeking opportunities abroad, resulting in a brain drain that further undermines the country's potential for recovery. Public health crisis. Access to health care has deteriorated, with shortages of essential medicines and medical supplies affecting millions. Number 2. Venezuela. A socioeconomic nightmare. Venezuela is experiencing one of the most severe economic crises in modern history, with a staggering decline in living standards, approximately 74% from 2013 to 2023. The country's GDP has contracted by about 61% per capita since 2014 due to a combination of factors, including mismanagement and external sanctions. Causes of the crisis. Dependence on oil. Venezuela's economy is heavily reliant on oil exports, which account for nearly all foreign currency earnings. The collapse in global oil prices since 2014 severely impacted government revenues. Political mismanagement. The government's authoritarian practices under Nicolas Maduro have led to widespread corruption and inefficiency. Economic policies, such as price controls and expropriations, have stifled production and investment. Hyperinflation. Venezuela has faced hyperinflation rates exceeding 130,000% at its peak in 2018. While inflation has slowed, it remains extremely high at around 190%. This has rendered the national currency virtually worthless. Sanctions. U.S. sanctions aimed at curbing Maduro's regime have further restricted Venezuela's ability to engage in international trade, exacerbating shortages of food and medicine. Social consequences. The repercussions of Venezuela's crisis are dire. Mass migration. Over 7 million Venezuelans have fled the country since 2015, creating one of the largest migration crises in Latin America. Humanitarian emergency. A significant portion of the population suffers from malnutrition and lack of access to healthcare services. Social unrest. Protests against government policies are common as citizens demand better living conditions and political reform. Number 3. Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, is rich in natural resources, but remains one of the poorest countries in the world due to decades of conflict, corruption, and mismanagement. Despite its vast mineral wealth, including cobalt, diamonds, and gold, the DRC faces severe economic challenges characterized by high inflation rates, over 10%, and widespread poverty affecting approximately 70% of its population. Causes of the crisis: prolonged conflict. The DRC has endured years of civil war and regional conflicts that have devastated infrastructure and displaced millions. Ongoing violence from armed groups continues to destabilize regions within the country. Corruption and governance issues. Corruption is rampant within government institutions, undermining efforts to promote economic development. Poor governance has led to misallocation of resources and limited public investment in essential services like healthcare and education. Economic dependence on mining. The DRC's economy is heavily reliant on mining exports. However, fluctuations in global commodity prices can lead to economic instability, as seen during recent downturns in demand for minerals. Humanitarian crises. The DRC faces multiple humanitarian crises driven by conflict-induced displacement, food insecurity affecting over 27 million people, and inadequate access to healthcare services. Social consequences. The social implications of the DRC's crisis are profound. High poverty rates. Approximately 70% of Congolese live on less than $1.90 a day, leading to widespread malnutrition and poor health outcomes. Healthcare challenges. The healthcare system is severely underfunded. Many regions lack basic medical facilities or personnel. Education disruption. Ongoing conflict has disrupted education for millions of children. Many schools are non-functional or unsafe due to violence. Recovery efforts. Efforts are being made to address the DRC's challenges. International aid programs. Various NGOs and international organizations are working on initiatives aimed at improving access to food security, healthcare services, and education. Peace-building initiatives. Efforts to promote peace building and reconciliation among conflicting parties are underway but face significant hurdles due to entrenched interests. Future prospects. The outlook for the DRC remains precarious. Need for governance reforms. Effective governance reforms are essential for stabilizing the economy and ensuring equitable distribution of resources. Investment in infrastructure needed. Long-term investments in infrastructure development will be crucial for fostering economic growth and improving living conditions. Number 4. Sri Lanka. From crisis to stabilization. Sri Lanka's economy has been through a tumultuous period, particularly highlighted by its default on foreign debt in 2022. The country has struggled with high inflation, currency devaluation, and widespread poverty. Despite projections for moderate growth of 2.2% in 2024, the impact of previous crises continues to linger heavily on the population. Causes of the crisis. Political mismanagement. The roots of Sri Lanka's economic troubles can be traced back to poor governance and political instability. The government's decision to implement ill-advised tax cuts and a rapid shift to organic farming without adequate preparation severely impacted agricultural output and foreign exchange earnings. External shocks. Multiple external shocks, including the COVID-19 pandemic and global supply chain disruptions due to geopolitical tensions, notably the Ukraine-Russia war, have exacerbated existing vulnerabilities in key sectors like tourism and agriculture. Debt dependency. Sri Lanka's heavy reliance on foreign debt has made it particularly susceptible to economic shocks. By 2019, commercial loans constituted 56% of its foreign debt, which increased its vulnerability as global financial conditions tightened. Humanitarian emergencies. The United Nations warned of a potential full-blown humanitarian emergency in June 2022 as food shortages and rising prices pushed many into poverty. By 2023, approximately 25.9% of Sri Lankans were living below the poverty line. Social consequences. The social ramifications of Sri Lanka's economic collapse are severe. Poverty increase. The crisis has led to a doubling of poverty rates, with many families struggling to afford basic necessities. Emigration surge. A significant number of Sri Lankans have sought opportunities abroad due to deteriorating living conditions. Healthcare decline. Access to healthcare services has been compromised as public health systems face resource shortages. Recovery efforts. Despite these challenges, there are signs of stabilization. IMF support. In 2023, Sri Lanka secured a crucial $3 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund (IMF). This extended fund facility, EFF, aims to restore fiscal stability through structural reforms. Fiscal reforms. The government has begun implementing measures aimed at improving revenue collection and restructuring state-owned enterprises. Tourism recovery. A rebound in tourism and remittances has contributed positively to the economy, helping stabilize foreign reserves. Future prospects. While there are positive indicators for recovery, such as improved inflation rates and fiscal reforms, challenges remain. Sustained poverty levels. Continued high poverty rates necessitate ongoing support for vulnerable populations. Political stability. Ensuring political stability will be critical for maintaining momentum in recovery efforts. Number 5. Haiti, a nation in perpetual crisis. Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere and has faced chronic instability for decades. The current economic situation is dire, with rampant inflation, food insecurity, and a deteriorating security environment contributing to an ongoing humanitarian crisis. Causes of the crisis. Political instability. Haiti's political landscape has been characterized by instability since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. This event further exacerbated existing governance issues and led to a power vacuum that has hindered effective leadership. Natural disasters. Frequent natural disasters, including earthquakes and hurricanes, have devastated infrastructure and disrupted economic activities. The 2010 earthquake alone resulted in significant loss of life and property. Economic mismanagement. Poor economic policies have led to high levels of corruption and inefficiency within government institutions. This mismanagement has stifled investment and hindered economic growth. International isolation. Haiti's international relations have been strained due to concerns over governance and human rights abuses. This isolation limits access to foreign aid and investment necessary for recovery. Social consequences. The implications for Haitian society are severe. Poverty rates. Approximately 60% of Haitians live below the poverty line, with many lacking access to basic services such as clean water, education, and health care. Food insecurity. Over half of the population faces food insecurity due to rising prices and supply chain disruptions. Mass migration. Many Haitians are fleeing the country in search of better opportunities elsewhere, contributing to a regional migration crisis. Humanitarian response. The international community has responded with varying degrees of support. Aid efforts. Humanitarian organizations are working tirelessly to provide food assistance and medical care. However, funding shortages often limit their effectiveness. Security assistance. Given the rise in gang violence, calls for international security assistance have increased as local law enforcement struggles to maintain order. Future prospects. Haiti's path forward is fraught with challenges. Need for political stability. Establishing a stable government is crucial for any meaningful recovery efforts. Economic reform necessity. Comprehensive economic reforms are needed to address systemic corruption and inefficiency. International engagement. Rebuilding relationships with international partners could provide much-needed resources for development initiatives. Number 6. Sudan, a nation in turmoil. Sudan's economy is projected to contract by 18.3% in 2024 due to ongoing conflict and instability. The situation has deteriorated sharply since April 2023, when violent clashes erupted between the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces. This conflict has devastated livelihoods, destroyed infrastructure, and led to massive displacement. Causes of the crisis: escalating conflict. The civil war that erupted in April 2023 has been a primary driver of Sudan's economic collapse. Fighting initially centered in Khartoum, but quickly spread throughout the country, leading to widespread destruction and loss of life. Humanitarian catastrophe. The conflict has resulted in over 11 million people being displaced, making it the largest internal displacement crisis globally. Food insecurity is rampant, with approximately 26 million people facing acute hunger, over half of Sudan's population. Economic mismanagement. Sudan has long struggled with economic mismanagement and corruption. The military coup in October 2021 halted crucial reforms and international support, exacerbating existing economic vulnerabilities. International isolation. Sanctions and diplomatic isolation have further hampered Sudan's ability to engage with international financial institutions, limiting access to aid and investment necessary for recovery. Social consequences. The humanitarian impact of the crisis is severe. Food insecurity. With soaring food prices and a lack of access to basic necessities, millions face starvation. Reports indicate that 755,000 people are experiencing catastrophic levels of hunger. Healthcare collapse. The healthcare system is in disarray, with most hospitals out of service due to damage from conflict or lack of resources. Disease outbreaks are imminent as sanitation deteriorates. Education crisis. Over 10,400 schools have closed due to violence, leaving nearly 19 million children without education and vulnerable to exploitation. Future prospects. The path forward for Sudan is fraught with challenges. Need for peace. A cessation of hostilities is critical for any meaningful recovery efforts. Rebuilding governance. Establishing a stable government that can implement reforms is essential for restoring international relations and attracting investment. Number 7. Pakistan. Facing economic collapse. Pakistan is grappling with one of its worst economic crises in recent history. The country faces high inflation rates exceeding 30%, a depreciating currency, and rising poverty levels. The economic outlook remains bleak as political instability continues to hinder recovery efforts. Causes of the crisis. Political instability. Political turmoil has plagued Pakistan for years. The ousting of former Prime Minister Imran Khan in April 2022 led to a power struggle that has destabilized governance and delayed crucial economic reforms. Debt burden. Pakistan's external debt stands at approximately $130 billion, constituting over 90% of its GDP. The country has struggled to meet its debt obligations amid dwindling foreign reserves. Inflationary pressures. High inflation rates have eroded purchasing power for ordinary citizens. Food prices have soared due to supply chain disruptions exacerbated by climate change-related disasters such as floods. Energy crisis. Pakistan faces severe energy shortages due to outdated infrastructure and insufficient investment in renewable energy sources. This has hampered industrial growth and led to frequent power outages. Social consequences. The social implications of Pakistan's economic crisis are dire. Rising poverty rates. Approximately 39% of Pakistanis live below the poverty line as a result of high inflation and unemployment rates reaching nearly 8%. Healthcare challenges. Access to healthcare services has diminished as public health systems face budget cuts and resource shortages. Education disruption. Many children have been forced out of school due to economic hardships, jeopardizing their future prospects. Future prospects. While there are signs of potential recovery, political stability required. Achieving political stability will be crucial for sustaining reform efforts. Investment in infrastructure needed. Long-term investments in infrastructure and energy sectors will be necessary for fostering economic growth. Number 8. Ukraine. War and economic resilience. Since Russia's invasion in February 2022, Ukraine has endured a catastrophic decline in its economy. The war has caused extensive damage to infrastructure and disrupted trade, leading to a projected GDP contraction of 29% in 2022. However, despite these challenges, Ukraine has shown remarkable resilience. As of 2024, the economy is expected to grow by approximately 3.7%, driven by defense spending, agricultural exports, and recovering industrial production. Causes of the crisis. Ongoing conflict. The war has been the primary catalyst for Ukraine's economic collapse. The conflict has resulted in significant loss of life, displacement of millions, and destruction of critical infrastructure. Key industries, particularly in eastern Ukraine, have been severely impacted by military actions. Trade disruptions. The war has led to a substantial decline in exports. Before the conflict, Ukraine was a major exporter of grains and metals. However, exports have fallen to less than half of pre-war levels due to blockades and destruction of transport routes. The cumulative goods trade deficit has approached $40 billion since the beginning of the invasion. Inflation and currency devaluation. Inflation peaked at 26.6% at the end of 2022, but has since moderated due to improved harvests and lower global energy prices. However, the Ukrainian hryvnia remains under pressure due to ongoing military expenditures and reduced foreign investment, dependence on foreign aid. As the war continues, Ukraine relies heavily on international financial support to maintain public services and fund military operations. In 2024 alone, it is estimated that Ukraine will need around $38 billion in external financing to cover civilian expenditures. Social consequences. The humanitarian impact of the war is profound. Displacement crisis. Over 8 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced due to the conflict, with millions more seeking refuge abroad. Poverty increase. The number of people living in poverty has surged to approximately 9 million, exacerbating social inequalities. Healthcare system strain. The healthcare system is under immense pressure due to ongoing conflict and resource shortages. Many hospitals have been damaged or destroyed, leading to inadequate medical care for those in need. Future prospects. While there are signs of economic recovery, continued dependence on aid, long-term recovery will depend on sustained international support and investment. Post-war reconstruction needs. Planning for post-war reconstruction will be critical as infrastructure damage is extensive and requires significant investment. Number 9. Cuba. Cuba's economy is currently facing a severe crisis characterized by stagnation, inflation, and shortages of basic goods. The country's economic model struggles under the weight of outdated policies and external sanctions. In recent years, Cuba's GDP growth has been sluggish, with projections indicating a growth rate of only around 1% for 2024. Causes of the crisis. Political mismanagement. Decades of centralized planning have stifled economic innovation and efficiency. The Cuban government's reluctance to implement meaningful reforms has hindered growth prospects. U.S. sanctions. Economic sanctions imposed by the United States have severely restricted Cuba's ability to engage in international trade and access foreign investment. These sanctions have compounded existing economic difficulties. COVID-19 pandemic impact. The pandemic dealt a heavy blow to Cuba's tourism-dependent economy, which is vital for generating foreign currency. Tourism revenues plummeted during the pandemic years, leading to increased fiscal deficits. Energy crisis. Frequent power outages due to aging infrastructure and insufficient energy supply have hampered industrial production and affected daily life for Cubans. Social consequences. The socioeconomic impact on Cuban society is stark. Rising poverty levels. Approximately 60% of Cubans live below the poverty line as inflation drives up prices for essential goods. Healthcare system strain. While Cuba boasts a robust healthcare system on paper, shortages of medical supplies and personnel have emerged due to economic constraints. Emigration surge. Increasing numbers of Cubans are fleeing the country in search of better opportunities abroad, leading to a brain drain that undermines future development prospects. Future prospects. The outlook for Cuba remains uncertain. Need for comprehensive reforms. For sustainable growth, comprehensive economic reforms are essential. Continued external pressures. Ongoing U.S. sanctions will likely continue to pose significant challenges for Cuba's economic recovery efforts. Number 10. Afghanistan, a nation in crisis. Since the Taliban's takeover in August 2021, Afghanistan's economy has experienced a catastrophic decline. The World Bank reported a staggering contraction of around 26% in real GDP growth during 2021 alone, with ongoing stagnation expected to persist into 2025. The Afghan economy remains heavily dependent on international aid, which accounted for approximately 75% of public expenditures prior to the regime change. With the suspension of foreign assistance following the Taliban's rise to power, Afghanistan faces severe economic isolation and a humanitarian crisis that affects millions. Causes of the crisis. Political instability. The abrupt change in government led to a loss of international recognition and support. Sanctions against Taliban leaders further isolated Afghanistan from global financial systems, freezing nearly $9.5 billion in external reserves held abroad. Humanitarian needs. The humanitarian situation has deteriorated sharply, with over 15 million people facing acute food insecurity as of 2024. Natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes have compounded these challenges, leading to widespread displacement and loss of livelihoods. Economic mismanagement. The Taliban's restrictive policies, particularly regarding women's rights and education, have stifled economic participation and growth. High unemployment rates, especially among young men, have contributed to social unrest and despair. Dependence on agriculture. Afghanistan's economy is heavily reliant on agriculture, particularly opium production. However, bans on opium cultivation have devastated farmers' incomes, leading to increased poverty and food insecurity. Social consequences. The impact of Afghanistan's crisis on its population is severe. Poverty levels. Approximately 50% of the population lives below the poverty line, with many families struggling to meet basic needs. Healthcare collapse. Access to healthcare services has diminished significantly due to budget cuts and resource shortages. Reports indicate that significant portions of the population lack access to essential medical care. Education crisis. With schools closed or operating under severe restrictions, millions of children, especially girls, are denied access to education, jeopardizing their futures. Future prospects. The path forward for Afghanistan remains uncertain. Need for political stability. A stable political environment is crucial for attracting international support and investment. Focus on human rights. Addressing human rights issues, particularly those affecting women, will be essential for fostering social cohesion and economic recovery. Conclusion. So, guys, this was the 10 fastest collapsing countries in the world right now. Hope you will like it and appreciate it. Both Lebanon and Venezuela exemplify how political mismanagement, economic dependence on volatile resources, and external shocks can lead to catastrophic outcomes for nations. Their crises serve as cautionary tales about the importance of sound governance, diversified economies, and robust social systems capable of withstanding both internal and external pressures. As these countries grapple with their challenges, international support and internal reforms will be crucial for any potential recovery efforts. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the bell icons for latest upcoming travel videos. Bye-bye. See you